open waters, the sea was calm with just a word from him. He has fought the raging war of sorrow. When he speaks, a whisper shouts within. I see a miracle in an empty grave. The one we thought was dead has come to life again. I see a miracle in every chain you break. The power of heaven roaring within me. He will lift the anxious and the weary, calling home the burdened and the lost. And I am proof that you delight in second chances. And I am proof of the power in the cross. I see a miracle in an empty grave. The one we thought was dead has come to life again. I see a miracle in every chain you break. The power of heaven roaring within me. All for love, you rose triumphant. All for love, you are. All for love, you came back for me. All for love, all for love, all for love. My name is worthy. All for love, you've come. All for love, your scars cried mercy. All for love, all for love. Jesus Christ, passion is his name. He traded all his glory for our shame. And like he rose, freedom from the ashes, we will rise from death to life again. I see a miracle in an empty grave. The one we thought was dead has come to life again. I see a miracle in every chain you break. The power of heaven roaring within me. I see a miracle. Oh, I see a miracle. Oh, I see a miracle. Oh, the power of heaven roaring within me.
Good morning, Dulles Church. Happy Easter. My name is Andrew. I'm so glad that you have joined us here today. Today is a really big day. First of all, because it's Easter, we're celebrating the resurrection of Jesus. And another thing is that this marks exactly a year since we have started meeting in person at Lightridge since the whole pandemic happened, after all the shutdowns and stuff. This is a year ago, last Easter, we had our first in-person gathering, and it was our first real gathering at Lightridge. So this is it's a year anniversary for our church here at Dulles. So for those of you who are sitting in the seats, happy 1 year anniversary, welcome. To those of you watching through a screen, welcome. We're also super glad that you are here. I've got 3 quick announcements for you, and they all happen next week, April 24th. So the first announcement is that Easter Part 2 is going to be next week. We've done Easter in 2 weeks this year, and something a little different that we're doing. But next week is going to be Easter Part 2, and it's going to be followed by communion that we're going to take together. So don't miss it. Invite a friend to that. Be there for Easter Part 2. That afternoon, from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m., the 45, our student group, is going to be going paintballing. So if you are a student, middle school to high school, and you haven't signed up and you want to go, come find me in the lobby. Find someone who maybe can help you out to find me, and let me know that you want to go, and I'll get you all set up. So that's going to be from 12 to 4. Come find me if you want to go paintballing. And later that night, Pastor Brad and Amy are going to be hosting their wine and cheese night. This is a really casual gathering for those of you maybe who haven't been to Dulles Church, it's your first time here, or maybe you've been a few times and you want to meet Pastor Brad and Amy face to face, and you want to talk with them, ask them some questions. This is the perfect time for you to do that. So again, it's 5 to 6:30. It's going to be at their house. Details can be found on our app under the events page. If you don't have our app, you can download it or find a team member and just say, hey, I want to go to Wine and Cheese tonight. And they would be more than happy to help you get that information that you need. All right, Dulles family, I am so happy that you have joined us for Easter. I'm super excited for Brad's part 1 of our Easter series. But before I go, I have some friends who want to say something to you.
Happy Easter, Dulles. Happy Easter, Dulles. Happy Easter, Dulles Church. Happy Easter, Dulles. Happy Easter, Dulles. Happy Easter, Dulles. Happy Easter, Dulles. Bye.
Hey, I'm really happy you're spending part of Easter with us, celebrating Easter or thinking about Easter with all of us. I, during my 4 years of college, worked for a small tech company, about 6 or 7 people. I was the shipping boy. I actually was the tester. We made circuit boards that went inside of Oki data printers, and I shipped them off to our customers. We had customers like Dow Jones in New York and Sports Ticker in New Jersey. And as the tester shipping boy, I guess, I was next to the tech lab. And the mastermind behind our product, a guy named George, was brilliant, about 20 years older than me, but we became really good friends. We spent a lot of our lunches together, and I got to know his family and friends, and we did stuff after work. He got to know my family and friends, and we talked all the time. And this guy was super smart. One of the smartest people I've probably ever known. In fact, I've never known somebody other than George who had 4 undergraduate degrees. He had a bachelor's in oceanic biology. He had a bachelor's in English literature. He was the kind of guy that seemed to know at least a little bit about every subject on earth. And so I was really intimidated in our conversations about philosophy or world news or worldviews. I was fine with that. But when he would bring up my faith, he was the one, as a skeptic, as a self-described atheist, he would bring up my faith a lot. He had so much trouble understanding how somebody young, a college student, was a part of a church and believed the things I believed. And it was intimidating to me because I didn't go around trying to talk to people about my faith, or certainly not making a big deal about it. And I was intimidated at that thought of telling my story, my faith story, or what I felt God had done for me or was doing in my life. But my friendship with George changed all of that. I really became really confident, very confident about what Jesus had come to mean to me because of the trust that George and I had. You know, this is a sidebar. When your relationships are trusting, when there's real trust, you can disagree and you can push back and challenge each other and still deeply respect each other. And at my young age in college, this was super transformative for me because I was actually beginning to talk out or answer questions, tough questions about my faith with someone who didn't necessarily agree but respected me. And so on this one particular day, and I remember it well because it really started to shape, this was my early memory of talking out my faith in a confident way. George said to me in the tech lab, "Brad, this is what I don't get. If God is so good, if he's intentional, if he's thoughtful toward us, why doesn't he clearly communicate that to us?" And I said, "Wow, George, you almost sound hopeful. That sounds sort of like wishful thinking." And he said, "Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't believe in God. But if it turns out that God is real and is good and has the ability to extend life where life doesn't end, but life can be good and never ending, and he rights the wrongs of things that have happened in the past, hey, if that God turns out to be true, then I'll be all in." And I said, "Okay, George, then what does it look like? You say, why doesn't God clearly communicate his thoughtfulness or his good? What would him clearly communicating that look like?" And I'm not kidding you. He didn't hesitate. He said, "Brad, he would come here. He wouldn't just speak up on some mountaintop somewhere to some random 2 or 3 religious people or only speak through some kind of mystical book. He would actually come here." And George was so descriptive about this and passionate about it. He would come here and he would walk and live in the kinds of experiences that we live, including some hurt or challenges that we face. And he would describe himself to us. He would tell us what God looks like and what God thinks, how God thinks of the world and people, and what he intends to do with the bad or the injustices that have happened here. And I was speechless that a friend, an atheist, was actually speaking in craving kinds of terms, like a wishful descriptive of the kinds of things that I actually believed. And after just standing there in silence for what seemed like forever, it was probably 8 or 10 seconds of just neither of us saying anything, he started to grin and said, "Oh, dang, Brad, that's what you believe Jesus did, isn't it?" And I said, "It is, George. Yeah, it is. It's remarkable how even atheists in our world and in our lives are actually craving or wishing what you and I believe to be true about Easter were actually true." So on this Easter Sunday, we're going to ask the question, what if the Easter story were true? What if God actually did come to our world 2,000 years ago? And of course, so many of us believe that's exactly what happened. That's the story of Jesus. And we've centered our lives around Jesus and this day, the story of Easter, the events of Easter. So we're going to answer that question. What would it mean for your past? What would it mean for your identity? What would it mean for your future if God actually did come? If Jesus, in fact, died, rose back from death, what would that mean for us and for who we want to be and who we crave to be and the life that we crave to have? I'm going to answer that question today with really an odd sort of construct. I would not have strategically planned this. I really have felt prompted to go down this path today, and you'll see what I mean here in just a moment. A few weeks ago, several guys were addressing just a problem someone was having. We were trying to be encouragers to someone here at church. And afterwards, one of the men said to me, "Wow, Brad, I've never really thought about how hard your job can be at times." And I said, "Yeah, that's nice. I love my job. I can't imagine doing anything else. than pastoring, or I can't imagine life, not being a pastor. But my job can be, draining at times, emotionally draining. Some of the challenges, sometimes I feel like I can't speak hope or encouragement the way I want to, and I don't have all the answers for situations, But I didn't tell those guys that night what is the most draining to me or the most challenging to me emotionally, and I'm going to just read it. Paul says it. The Apostle Paul says this in one sentence. The preaching of the cross is nonsense to those who are involved in this dying world. Now, let me stop mid-sentence here and explain. Paul does not mean for a second here that we shouldn't be involved in this world or having fun or laughter or working hard at our jobs or raising our families or going on vacations. When he says involved in this dying world, his language, and it's crystal clear what Paul is saying, not only in this letter, but in all of his letters, it's crystal clear what Jesus says about this world, that those who put their hope in the things of this world to not just make them happy, completely happy, but to make them whole, they're going to be absolutely disappointed. There's nothing in this world that will satisfy and make you whole, will satisfy the craving that you have to become someone that you're not, that you currently aren't, and to fix the internal struggles that you and I have that we want to fix. This world and the stuff of this world will never allow you to be fully alive the way you and I want to be. The preaching of the cross is nonsense to people who think that success in this world or making enough money or having the right friend group that defines them will identify them, will make them the person that they absolutely want to be with no regrets. Nothing in this world is going to do that. But to us, who are being rescued from that death, what Paul's speaking of is the world is broken. This is one of the great struggles that people have who see the cross, the story of the cross, the pathway of the cross toward full life as nonsense or foolish. They don't understand. And I have this conversation at coffees and lunches, so much people who want to believe. They want to believe there's life after this life. There's life that is good and lasts forever. And that God has a plan for good. They want that. They crave it. The hang up, ultimately with the cross making any sense or being relevant to our lives, is they don't understand that this world is broken. And there's this belief that if we work hard enough, or my generation is going to be different than all the past generations that were selfish or prideful. We tell our kids that if you just dream hard enough, Disney World says, if you dream a dream, anything can happen. We live in this world where we say, well, we can do it. I can make it work. Problems in myself, problems in life, I can fix them. I just have to be determined enough. People with that kind of logic or thinking, or who aren't learning from history or learning from the world around us today and how broken our world is today, but believe that somehow we can do the things that fix this world or make us completely satisfied, are never going to understand the relevance of the cross, because they believe this world actually possesses the tools or the elements to make them whole. To those of us who are being rescued from that death, the death that has broken this world, the cross is nothing less than the power of God. And what Paul is saying, and what Jesus describes, what the New Testament is crystal clear in, is that humans broke this world. It's broken. It wasn't supposed to be that way. That wasn't God's plan. But when we decided to take control away from God in our selfishness, that's what sin is, by the way. Sin can sound like awful person or bad person. Sometimes pastors in church history have used the word sin to judge people or judge people's behavior. Sin is, when I say simply, it is simply the description of humans being broken by selfishness and a need for control. It made us counter to the character of God. It made you counter and so different than who you were intended to be. Always generous, always patient. And if you say, well, Brad, that's not realistic. We're human. We're only human. Yeah, we're only human because we're broken. What we were intended to be was always self-giving, never prideful, always elevating others, always full of hope. Our creativity was always about the good of others and reflecting, emulating the image of God, the character of God. That's who we were intended to be. When we took control from God, when we, in our selfishness, decided we would be in control, it broke creation. It broke the world as God intended it to be. It doesn't mean God lost control. It means that he did not program us as computers or robots to do what he wants. He wants us to be people who choose him at the center. And so people who think that this world can satisfy and make us who we want to be, they're going to always see the cross as foolish, as nonsense. So one of my challenges, this is relevant because I went into this Easter deciding I want Easter to not be nonsensical to people. I don't want it to be foolish to people. I want to describe Easter in a way that connects the dots. And after all, this is why Jesus told of his kingdom and his reality and the state of this world and the state of humanity by using stories. Stories emotionally connect us to realities or situations or contexts better than anything, better than lectures or just plain presentations. Stories emotionally connect us. Jesus described himself, the nature of God, the character of humans. Our current state is fallen and broken in our ugliness. He described the reality of God and us through stories and pictures and parables and metaphors. He gave us farmers who plant seeds, and the seed represents the life of God, and the soil is the human heart. And there's soft soil, and there's hard soil, and there's soft soil, but soil that's also growing thorns and weeds, which are the distractions and other priorities in life that get ahead of God. He talked about lost coins. Jesus described salt in flavorless situations where we are preservers of life and we give life. He described lights as lamps that are lit, that can be hidden or kept for ourselves, or light that can be shared with others in dark situations. Jesus described dinner scenes as God's ultimate plan for us in relationship with us, that we would be at a dinner where the food never ends and there's just laughter and community. He described wine at wedding parties, sons who waste inheritances, herds of sheep that are in community, but one wanders off in the heart of God to go find that sheep. Jesus constantly described the state of this world through stories. He constantly described the heart of people gripped by fear or controlled by our own pride, constantly through stories. Jesus gives us so many pictures. It only takes one, by the way. It would only take one to open our eyes to the reality of the brokenness of this world. What this world is never going to provide or satisfy for you and me. The money, the job, the career, the path that you're on may look really great and promising. And not that there'll ever be necessarily anything catastrophic in your future career or your money earning. But you will eventually come to a place of realizing, wow, this strategy of finding life and whole life in my career or the income I earn didn't do it. What is the answer? And it's always going to be foolish. The pathway of the cross is always going to be foolish to someone who believes that this world can make them whole. DJ was home for Christmas, home from Virginia Tech, and we did a little, not a whole Harry Potter marathon, but we got through 3 or 4 of the movies. And I just think it's another picture. It's a modern picture. I think it's one of the epic recent pictures that describes some of the life of Jesus. J.K. Rowling didn't publicly promote Harry Potter as a metaphor of Jesus, but clearly she did. We see hints all throughout the story, and she hints about it. She's hinted about it in public. And without any spoilers, it's amazing when Ron and Hermione and Harry devised the strategy to finally defeat Voldemort, the evil of Voldemort, and not just destroying 5 or 6 of the Horcruxes, and not just 7, but all 8 of them. And man, when I realized what was happening, I was like, wow, this is such a clever picture. It's another picture of the life of Jesus, where he gave us so many stories and pictures to help us understand the state of this world. It's never, ever going to satisfy what you deeply crave, and that is a God who is good, who rights the wrongs and injustices of this world and lays out a future for you that is beautiful and that never ends, where you become who you can't become on your own. So in my attempt to describe the cross in Easter weekend in a way that won't be nonsense to people, where the light comes on or people are connecting the dots, I ended up on this just very strange, odd path, which is to talk about the gruesomeness of the cross. Have you ever wondered why is the picture of the cross, the story of Good Friday, the story of Jesus crucifixion, why is it so gross? In fact, you maybe haven't really considered it for very long, because we glamorize the cross. We put it on cars and on buildings, and we wear it as jewelry. And listen, there's nothing, I'm not critiquing anyone who wears a cross as jewelry. I assume it's sacred to you. Crosses can be good luck charms and religious relics to people. You know, maybe if I wear this, God will give me his favor, like it's some kind of superstition. But many people that I know that wear crosses, it's just a sign of their faith and what matters to them deeply, what Jesus has done for them. But my point is that we make the cross in very clean edges, and we polish it and we make it shine. People in the first century Roman Empire would never have understood that. Putting a cross on a building would have been morbid. They would not have understood, why are you putting that awful, horrific sign on your shirt or on your car? Imagine today, when we think about how grotesque the cross is, in our day, in our world, imagine if I just in church announced next week, hey, we're starting a finance campaign. We're going to raise some capital here. We're going to raise over top the center aisle here, over where I speak every Sunday, to inspire you while you're singing in our worship. And while I'm speaking, you can glance up and look at a beautiful new electric chair. And this electric chair it's going to hang at a little bit of an angle, and slumped out of it is going to be a dead body. And that's going to be there for our guests and our neighbors that we invite to church. They're going to be inspired by this electric chair as I'm speaking and as we're doing music. I mean, that's ridiculous. You know, I want to thank the Williams family and the Jones family for contributing to our amazing electric chair. And we have to polish it every couple of years. I mean, you know, I could go on with this example. It's super morbid. I even consider not giving that example today, because it's Easter Sunday, where everything's supposed to be colorful and we're talking about life. But to get to life, full life that heals and makes whole, we have to go through the cross. And so why was the cross so ugly and gruesome and gross? In fact, you may not have ever heard this description of the cross from Isaiah. I grew up in church, and I can only remember one time a pastor ever referring to this scripture from Isaiah about the cross, about Jesus on the cross. And maybe this is part of the reason you've just never considered it so gross. Listen to what Isaiah says about the appearance of Jesus once on the cross. Just as there were many who were appalled at him, his appearance was so disfigured beyond that of any man, and his form marred beyond human likeness. Isaiah's telling us that people walking by, or bypassers at the crucifixion site outside Jerusalem that day, would look at the sight of Jesus on the cross and not even be sure if it was a human. There would be people trying to figure out, is that a mutilated animal? Now, again, it's Easter Sunday, and I told Amy last night, I'm really second guessing this message. This strategically is not a way to help people connect to the relevance of the cross. My hope is that it wouldn't be nonsense to somebody for the first time this Easter season, watching with us online or at Lightridge, or maybe several people, or maybe more than several. The dots would connect and they would start to see the relevance of the cross. And I said, Amy, I just don't know that talking about how gruesome the cross is the right strategy. And she said, but you're following this prompting that you've been feeling going into Easter. And I said, I am. And she said, stick to that. I don't know if I can describe or give a message that makes the story of the cross anything other than nonsense to you. But the cross was so ugly. It was so grotesque because our brokenness, our selfishness, our need for control took humanity in a completely counter direction than God intended us. He intended us to thrive in this world. He intended us to always be patient, always be generous, always be self-giving, never prideful, always speaking words of life and hope, which would emulate him, his character in us. And we are not those people. We struggle with defensive responses. In our anger, we can be fearful. We can be intimidated by situations or other people, not confident as creators and life givers and hope givers. And those things may not sound ugly to you or gross to you, but they are gross and ugly and gruesome to God compared to what he designed you and me to be. And we don't like the word sin. I grew up in church where sin seemed to imply that we are awful people, or God judges us or looks down on us. God doesn't call us awful, bad people. Sin is a word that means selfish and controlling. We've chosen to be selfish, to do life my way, and to be in control of my life instead of God in his character controlling every part of me. And so the cross was gruesome and horrific and hideous because God had to deal with the broken and ugly that we had become. Peter describes this here, I think, just so well in these couple of sentences. Jesus personally bore our sins in his own body on the cross. He took onto his body, he took into himself our ugly, our selfishness, our grotesqueness, counter to who we were supposed to be. You know, I had a friend in high school and college. He died tragically. I ran this by Amy last night too. Like, I'm not sure I should tell the story of Jackie on Easter. And she said, Brad, do it. This is the whole point. Jackie was a friend. In fact, I played golf with him 4 days before he died in this awful car accident. He was working. He was driving a water truck for work. He delivered water in big trucks to like swimming pools and construction sites. And on a simple little country lane around a turn, the truck went off the road, and when it rolled, Jackie was thrown from the truck and it rolled over him. And the theory was, from the police and family and some of his friends, he was going around a turn next to a fishing pond where he fished a lot, and he was probably looking at the fishing pond, and as he went around the turn, the water in the truck shifted. There weren't baffles in the water trucks then that there are now to keep the weight from shifting, and the weight shifted so much it rolled the truck off the road, and it rolled over Jackie. And it wasn't just that our friend died. This was the first time in my life I experienced like tragedy. I think I was 17 or 18 when this happened. He was a little bit older than me, but it's such a good friend. And I was just in shock, and everybody was. But not only the loss of him, but how gruesome his death was. And so we got to the funeral home. The night before his funeral, they had a gathering of friends and family, and I'll never forget walking through the door of the funeral home, and one of our friends met a few of us and said, hey, heads up, Jackie's mom really decided for the casket to be open tonight in the next room, and you may not want to go in that room. And I did later. I mean, it was such a distraction that night that, you know, a night where we're supposed to be grieving together and celebrating the life of our friend, we were also distracted by the next room and whether do we greet his mom in this room, and why would she want this, And all I'll just say today is he looked nothing like himself, and I'll just leave it at that. It was this horrific scene, and we read in Isaiah and we read in the gospel accounts how brutal the cross was. And here Peter tells us that he intentionally bore our ugly, our sin, again, our selfishness and our need for control is why the cross was ugly and gross and horrific. He bore that on himself, in his own body on the cross, so that we might be dead to sin and be alive to all that is good. We're celebrating today because Easter Sunday follows the horror of Good Friday. And when Jesus walks out of the tomb, he has left all of the ugly, all of your selfish, all of your brokenness in the tomb. Brokenness from your past, but also from your future. The defensive moment and the angry moment and the taking control, even in your future, Jesus took all of it into his tomb and walks out defeating death, all of death. Every kind of death was defeated when Jesus came out of the tomb on Easter Sunday. He became dead to what makes us dead, dead to all that is diametrically opposite of what is alive and good. Peter goes on to say, it was the suffering that he bore which has healed you. You and I can become everything we crave to be and everything we want for life that never ends because of Jesus healing us through a life that defeats the kind of death and brokenness and ugly that he took into the tomb with him, that he bore on the cross. The last picture I want to leave you with is Mary Magdalene on Easter morning. It's amazing to me that women were the first to witness Jesus alive. Women in Jesus' day, talk about inequality. I mean, women had no voice of any kind. It wasn't that they just couldn't vote. They couldn't speak with any kind of authority in public. Women were essentially servants of men in the Roman Empire. And Jesus so began with his resurrection, even equality, the movement towards equality, that women were the first to recognize Jesus alive, to discover his resurrection. They were the ones who announced to the disciples that Jesus wasn't in the tomb. And Mary Magdalene, when she first encounters the empty tomb, she's trying to figure out, was his body moved? Did they move him to another tomb? Did someone steal his body? When Jesus approaches her, Jesus alive on Easter morning. And I never had this thought until doing this study this year and preparing for this Easter, that Mary was with Jesus and many of his other followers all through Good Friday, all through the crucifixion. And she saw the end result, the mutilated Jesus on the cross. So logically, she probably can't compute that he's now standing whole and beautiful in front of her. She doesn't recognize him until he says her name. And on this Easter, I just wonder how many, maybe you, have defined yourself by the ugly. Maybe you've defined yourself or even your experience with God by Good Friday. God did something for you. You know that he loves you, but you can't see through the ugly of your habits or that event or that choice you made, or maybe just the way you react or the impatience or the pride that you struggle with. And to allow Jesus to absorb that ugly and to become that gruesome version of ourselves. And then to see him approaching you and me today, saying your name and saying my name. Jesus whole and alive, having defeated death, every kind of brokenness, every kind of death. That's the Jesus that approaches you and me today. It's mind-boggling how it changes everything. It changes your whole past and your whole future. That Jesus who's defeated your brokenness and ugly and your selfishness and your need for control is offering you a life-shaping, character-developing, power in you on this Easter. And the choice is yours for the taking. And it begins simply with you giving control to Jesus, no longer needing to be in control, no longer demanding that life happens your way, no longer being dictated by your own selfishness, but choosing the selflessness of Jesus and choosing him to be in control. And it can be the life-changing moment simply with the words, Jesus, I give you my life. I'm not going to hold on. I'm not going to try to hide anymore. I'm not going to try to cover this up anymore. I'm giving you my whole life. Jesus, today, I give you my life. Listen, if you are deciding that or saying those words today to Jesus, whether it's the first time or you're recommitting your life to him, would you let me know? You can, through our app or website, you can communicate through our cares team, or through my email directly. I would just love to know that you have joined me and the rest of our church community by giving your life to Jesus. Listen, we've got Easter Part 2 coming up next week. We're going to share in communion at the end of a message next week. I'm super excited about the message. It relates to people who think they're too late or people who've missed Easter. We're going to talk about two guys that missed it. They encountered Easter after the fact, and how it's never too late. And so we're going to share communion together here online and at Lightridge High School. Next month, we have the winery event, Church at the Winery, coming up. There's talk of a luau this summer that I think is going to be super fun for us. Amy and I are hosting at our house next week a wine and cheese. If you're in the Dulles area, we'd love to have you come hang out and just get to know us better and us get to know you better. I love that we've journeyed toward Easter together, and we're going to continue that with Part 2 next week. Happy Easter, everybody. I love you guys so much.
For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, and whosoever believes will not perish, they shall have eternal life. I shall hold to the cross. I shall hold to God alone, for his love has salvaged me, for his love has set me free. For God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, and whosoever believes will not perish, they shall have eternal life. I shall wait upon the Lord. I shall wait upon his word, and by his grace I am released, and by his grace I am redeemed. Oh, for God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, and whosoever believes will not perish, they shall have eternal life. eternal life. They shall have eternal